Hey everyone, it's Brandt, back in the garage to take you through a quick build video of my spline cutting jig that I built for my table saw. You may have seen this in some of my recent box building videos, so stick around and I'll show you how I built it. Now before we get into the build process of this project, I need to give you a quick tour of this edge joining sled that I built a while back because that's what our spline jig is going to be based on. It's basically just a flat plywood board with an aluminum runner down the middle, 3/4 of an inch wide by 1/4 of an inch thick, and just screw it into place. So I can lay it down flat on either side of the blade, and the edges of that board were cut flush with the blade so that anything hanging off the edge of the board will get cut straight. Now to hold the material down to the board, we've got a series of bolts and handles with these captive T-nuts in them that just screw into the captive T-nuts down in the board and clamp the material into place. Now this sled was designed to take a board like this that has an irregular edge, and then you can clamp it into place, hanging it just off the edge of the board, and then you can run it through the table saw and get a nice straight edge. Now for the spline jig, I just need something that will slide through the table saw and hold my frame or box at a 45-degree angle so I can cut splines. So I figure, why should I go through the effort of building a whole new sled when I've already got this one, and I can just add on a spline jig attachment that I can use from time to time when I need it. So the jig starts out as just a scrap piece of 1x6 here, cut roughly to the same length as our sled. And then we switch to the crosscut sled to actually cut that board. And from the offcut of that 1x6, we'll cut a couple more pieces of the same length, about 5 inches long, and those will be the two side supports of our spline jig. The two side pieces each get a 45-degree angle cut on one end of the board. To get these side pieces properly positioned, we'll need some triangle-shaped 45-degree support pieces. So I headed back to the scrap bin for some 3/4 inch material, and I cut out 4 45-degree angle triangles on the miter saw. Now because of all the 45-degree angles involved here, this would be difficult to glue and clamp up, and frankly I just didn't want to wait for the glue to dry. So I opted to use a combination of CA glue and activator to put the pieces together. So I glued the triangle support pieces onto the side pieces, then marked out the center of my baseboard, and glued the two side assemblies onto the base. The combination of CA glue and activator sets up these joints in seconds. Once that was all glued together, I drilled and countersunk a series of holes and ran wood screws into each joint. With the new spline jig assembled, we can bring it back out to the table saw and set it up on the edge joining sled, lining up the edge of the jig with the edge of the sled, and then clamping it down in place. Once the jig is secured to the sled, you can start clamping in your workpiece and any stop blocks that you need for positioning. This is just a small block that I cut up as a test piece to sort of simulate a small box. I found that a small box like this is a bit awkward to clamp in, but it's not too bad. Now I found it was a bit difficult to clamp in something flat like a picture frame because there wasn't much to clamp to. So I threw together this back support piece that I could clamp in and then clamp the picture frame to it. That way I could secure it into the sled over the blade. As of publishing this video, I've already used this jig on a few projects, and thus far it's worked pretty well. I think my favorite aspect of this design is that it is just a modular piece that I can clamp into an existing sled. It's easy to drop in and remove, and doesn't take up much space. It's worked well for smaller items, but I suspect that if I wanted to cut splines in something larger, I might have difficulty with this particular jig. I think if I were to build this one again, I would stick with the modular concept and just build the spline jig a bit wider to handle larger items, and set it up so I could drop it into my crosscut sled so that I could have that 45-degree support on both sides of the blade. I think that would be a simpler design and would probably be easier to clamp and secure pieces into. But thus far this one has been working well, and I hope this jig build inspires you to build something of your own. Now, if this is your first time here and you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel for more project videos like this in the future. Or follow me on social media. And as always, thanks for watching.